Here we have a late onager. It is a piece of Roman artillery. It is the quintessential Roman artillery piece of the late Empire. Its technology is based on torsion. The power of the machine is generated by a coil of ropes around a frame. In particular, this machine has 400 meters of rope, which is arranged on a horizontal axis, in the center of which the arm is inserted. It is a more advanced model than previous ones from the 2nd century AD. Its advantage is that it has wheels for transport, and it also has a spoon. The spoon has enormous importance because it allows throwing not only round stones, as until now, but it allows throwing practically anything. In some cases, stones of small caliber were thrown to generate a kind of hail similar to the mortars that were used in the 14th and 15th centuries. It is a quite powerful machine of a fairly large caliber and can throw stones of 2 kilos about 250-300 meters away. This is the first flamethrower in history. It consists of 3 well-differentiated elements. There is a bellows at its rear. That was the one that propelled the air. There is a wooden beam that had been cut in half to empty its core to create the effect of the tube, and then it had been reassembled. And at the front there is a cauldron to put the incendiary substances. Thus the machine operation is very simple. The bellows expelled the air passed through the tube and pushed the flames that were at the front, as if it were a giant torch. It may seem like a fairly rudimentary machine, but it must be considered that this machine is from the 5th century BC. This machine is 2,500 years old and is from a historical period in which not even the first catapult had been invented. It was used against field fortifications, especially those where wood prevailed, and wood, when exposed to the weather for a long time, it is known that it gets very dry. It would burn like tinder. It would burn very easily. All this led to this machine being widely used and above all having a very specific purpose, attacking wooden fortifications. Here we have the first model of onager. It is another piece of torsion artillery. It is a piece of heavy artillery. It is the quintessential piece of the Roman imperial era. Unlike the previous and more known models that have attached a spoon on the top, this one, the firing mechanism carries a hook with a sling where the projectile was placed. When fired, the rope was released and the stone was thrown. It is a heavy machine, quite heavy. It can throw stones of 2 kilos about 300-350 meters away. It is such a heavy model that when firing, it had to be anchored to the ground because the machine jumped more or less, around half a meter in height due to the recoil. Hence the name onager. The onager is a wild donkey. It is a wild donkey that still lives in the area of Syria. When the Romans went to catch it, it kicked violently and jumped. Hence the name of this machine, onager. We are next to another model of battering ram. This would be a very primitive battering ram. All those designs that do not have a pitched roof to protect the soldiers are very primitive, because the soldiers who operated them were very exposed to enemy fire that fell from the top of the walls. We see the ram's head again, always a ram's head, in this case very schematic. Unlike other models that had a wedge shape, which were designed to break the stones and blocks of the wall, this one is much flatter. So its goal was to displace them, not break them. This is a model of a Roman battering ram. Its technical name is Aries Prensilis, and it is a model that they used in the Roman army at the beginning of times during the Republican period. The early centuries of the Republic until later they evolved their designs to covered models. Here we have a mantlet or protective shield. It is a machine carried by 2 soldiers. Each inserted his arm into one of the handles and grabbed the top. And what it did was approach to the base of the wall, so that when they reached their destination, the 2 legs we see were lowered at the back and anchored to the ground. This way they could be working behind, protected from enemy shots. It is a kind of mobile palisade that can be brought closer and moved away from the city walls, which are always fixed. The machine we have next to us is a demolition crow. This machine was used in combination with the early battering rams. Thanks to the hooks it has on its front, it served to remove the stones from the wall once they had been moved. The previous step was for the rams to hit the stones of the wall once they were already moved. This machine was used to hook the stones and pull them out. It is a machine used for demolition, and it was essential in the tasks of breaching the walls because it allowed a clean cut so that the workers could continue removing stones. This machine is called a vinea. It is called vinea because of its shape, like the vineyards in the fields. It is a protective machine. It has a 2-sloped cover, and attackers used it to connect the positions of the besieging camp with the base of the wall, so they could move inside and approach the wall always protected. It has a 2-sloped cover, and the roof is made of wood and the sides of reed, all of which would be covered with untreated hides so that the fire would not burn on its structure. It is a quite useful machine, especially because it generated a lot of uncertainty in the enemy, not knowing if there were any soldiers inside or not. These machines were joined one after another, forming a kind of corridor, like a long tunnel as it goes in modules. More modules could be added until getting close to the base of the wall. Here we have a muzzle. This machine soon, the Roman engineers realized that the soldiers handling the battering rams were very exposed to enemy fire, to practically everything they threw from the top of the walls. So what they did was design this system with a goblet roof, a very steep slope, so that by offering a shallow angle to impacts, stones and any object thrown from the top of the walls fell on both sides of the machine without impacting its structure. These machines always have a ram's head. Why? Well, because the ram is an animal that is always butting, there are also a series of mythological components. Even though we see all these machines externally in wood, we have to imagine that all these machines would be covered with untreated hides. In untreated hides, it has been proven that fire does not burn, so they would all be insulated. Because if not, being constructed of wood against incendiary weapons, they would burn quite easily. This is the first flamethrower in history. It consists of three very distinct elements. A bellows at its rear, which was the one that propelled the air, a wooden beam that had been sawed in half and had its core emptied to create the effect of a tube. And then it was reassembled, and in the front part, a cauldron, where the incendiary substances went. So the operation of the machine is very simple. The bellows expelled the air passed through the tube and pushed the flames that were in the front part as if it were a giant blowtorch. It may seem like a fairly rudimentary machine, but it's important to consider that this machine is from the 5th century BC. This machine is 2,500 years old and is from a historical moment when not even the first catapult had been invented. Its use against field fortifications, especially those where wood predominated, and wood, when exposed to the elements for a long time, everyone knows that it becomes very dry. It would burn like tinder, it would burn very easily. And that led to this machine being widely used, and above all having a very specific purpose: attack against wooden fortifications.